Hi, I'm Finn. So today I just wanted to do a video just reminiscing a bit of my high school days, and I just wanted to do a video with it that is the the three things I wish I knew when I was in high school. So, um, all right. So I actually had a pretty decent high school experience. It wasn't too shocking for me. I was neither the highly popular person, neither was I the one that was picked on or bullied, right? Um, if anything, my brother deems me sort of someone who went under the radar. My brother and I actually went to the same high school. He was 3 years younger than me, and I was known because of him. So it was sort of like, oh, you're blah blah sister, if that makes sense. So I had friends, they've had social issues and anything like that, but just under the radar more or less. So I also changed high schools about 4 different times. So in a lot of my other videos, you may already know that I grew up in a fairly dysfunctional alcoholic home. I had an addiction to change. So when I changed schools, it was merely out of the desire to actually have a new experience and meet new friends. And I always kept friends from my prior schools. It was never any other reason. Probably made a lot of people upset when I left, actually, and I look back and I realise that might have been, a bit hard for some of the people I made friends and then just disappeared. But so a bit of an unusual high school upbringing. I also went overseas to the US for 6 months on an exchange. So yeah, 4 different high schools, all great in their own ways. But if looking back, I'd see similarities in every one of those high schools. So what's the first thing that I would tell someone who's in high school and is one of the three things that I wish I knew? Well, one of those is that who you were in high school or isn't who you are. So you can get really hung up on the identity that you create during those high school years. And the fact is, as long as you choose to have that be your reality, it'll continue to be reality. But what you'll see when you leave is just how many people go on to forge a life for themselves that just have nothing to do with the identity that you may have known them in high school, right? Some don't, some continue to be the same type of person, right? But generally, a lot of people really find their wings when they leave high school. It is a really, really concentrated environment. In a lot of ways, whilst there's some great social aspects of high school, it's a very strange thing, really. It's an institution. Anyway, I'll go into that one. That was one of my other ones. But yeah, who you are, who you were in high school and who you currently are isn't who you can be, and it isn't who you are when you're going to look back. And I just think it's very easy to get mixed up in the social rankings and this funny, this world of popular and not popular, and it's a lot of shit, actually. Like, I'd never had time for it, and maybe that's why I did kind of half okay during high school. I just didn't care, and the problem with not caring is that you can not care about a lot of other parts of your life, and I've certainly been there, and that's sometimes called depression. But I didn't care. But I get for people who do, it can be quite, a horrible experience when you're very determined to sort of seek approval from the higher ups or the people that you deem popular. The thing is, it's such an interesting thing because a lot of what you may consider popular at the time, when you look back, you'll see that it's such a strange thing. Like, the people who were popular in my school, or would have been called popular, I can't even tell you the characteristic that would be common in that. Like, it was people who were into parties, the party scene, and drinking at an early age, and living it up a bit. Also, the extroverts, more likely extroverts in general, would be more popular, and they're also in groups. So they're always popular people, like, they're people who need to be in groups and click and this sort of thing. And I'm not saying that's bad, but there's a loss of individuality in that, right? So first things first, what I tell someone is, when you leave and you're going to look back, who you were isn't who you are, and you'll get that. Like, you'll really get that, especially if you work on yourself and you follow your dreams and your passions. You really see that it's just a blip in your whole life experience is this period of, you know, oh, like, yeah, that's, it's just crazy. Like, anyway, second one that I wish I knew was the idea of school. So it's an institution. It's sort of put in place to have people learn to be disciplined and to learn knowledge. Often, I believe, knowledge that's sometimes just has no relevance to the outside world. So I have to say, a lot of my experiences and my knowledge came from the home, called street smarts and having to grow up. And responsibility is not learned in school. So self-awareness is not learned in school. There are a lot of things that you're not going to learn in high school, and it comes outside of high school. And I wish I knew that more, because I probably would have got, really focused more on the things that I really enjoyed that weren't so high school based. I actually didn't get involved in much extracurricular. So I'm glad I didn't, because it would have just probably taken away more time, or put more emphasis on the institution. And this is look, this is a point of view. A lot of people will disagree, because I actually don't have an issue with extracurricular activities. I think it's, I think it's really important to get involved in different experiences. I just did a lot outside of the school, so I didn't do extracurricular activities that were involved with my high school. There were always things on the outside. So as long as you're doing something to expand your experiences, I don't think that's a problem. But what I'll get back to is that high school is an institution, and it's there for a reason. So it's what you learn. You might find that you're not someone who you just don't enjoy high school at all. And it's because it's for a type of person. Like, it honestly just does not fit every type of person, because it's a learning method, the way the learning's structured. Some people are highly visual, some people are really kinesthetic, which means they've got to use their body when they learn information. And sitting in a chair for 8 hours a day just might not work for you. And I was one of those people who could study, and I didn't even study. I was a procrastinator, and that's another symptom of another thing, but highly procrastinated. But I got through, and just always sort of achieving this okay level, hence what I mean under the radar, right? But nothing inspired me to sort of really push harder. Like, it just didn't, the learnings sometimes somewhat, I just didn't find relevant to the real world. And in a lot of ways they aren't. Like, I've never, and this is just a personal thing, used a lot of the math that I did. I used basic math because I've been in a job where I don't need it, right? But I understand if someone might. Some of the stuff, I did modern history. Like, I get it. Like, there's experiences in the world we kind of repeat, but sometimes I just think there should be classes that focus on things that are actually so relevant and maybe future-based, right? And I'm getting a bit off topic here, but just remember, high school is an institution, and just if you don't fit in, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that the system doesn't work for you, and maybe that's a good sign. So, and I think some of the biggest thinkers in the world and people who have really caused waves and actually, make a difference, people who are non-conformists, and they use that to their ability. It's an advantage. So really embrace that. If school isn't something that works for you, you will find what does. It doesn't have to be this particular institution. The third thing is that just perspective. Okay, so when you're in high school, it's just the most important thing that matters. And man, you live in a high school world. Trivia, the dramas that happen, who's dating who, whether you're thin or not, whether you get, you're fat, whether what did you eat for lunch, who's doing what on the weekend. And this is the great thing about teenage years, because quite frankly, you haven't really got anything to worry about. And sometimes I just wish I could go back to being 15 and not have to worry about anything and not have any responsibility. That would be fantastic. I was having a shit time at home, but even inside that, I was still actually able to be somewhat of a teenager, where you can just be so self-centered and self-absorbed. And I know that sounds horrible in saying that, but that is the truth. And I think you might as well just own that, because it's the only period in your life you're actually going to be able to be like that. So you might as well relish it. Or you could be like that when you're older, but you're basically a dickhead if you do that. So the fact is, when you're in that age group of 13 to 17, just milk it up. If you just be as self-absorbed as you can be, live in that world. The only thing I'd say is high school is such a blip in time. So in particular for high school, okay? So in schooling, in terms of school, I'm not talking about college, schooling, it's what? So age 6, in Australia we go from kindy, so age 5 to 18 for us might be similar. So 13 years. You spend 13 years out of a possible, let's say you live to 84, out of possible 84 years, you spend only 13 in an institution or a school. And so let's just go, all right, you only even spend, 6 or 7 at high school if you get through the whole thing. 6 or 7 out of your whole life you spend there, and yet at the time it is such a huge deal to you. And what you'll find is I've been out of school for 11 years, high school, and I went back to my 10-year reunion last year, and man, I just wish I hadn't gone because it was so depressing, like, in some ways. Great in others to see people, but what you really get is just, a lot of these people you'll never see again in your life. Like, you just won't. And if you're anything like me, you really don't care if you did or you didn't. Okay, so there's a couple of friends that I made in high school, because I actually had friends, clearly, like I said, out of 4 different high schools. I also had friends from my primary school that I've known my whole life. So I had a decent foundation there. But there, I just didn't know if I wanted to go back to my high school reunion or not. And it could have, to be honest, it really had no impact on me either way. It didn't really matter to me. And for a lot of people, that's the case. They just don't see the relevance of going back. For some people, it's a really big deal for them. But what I'd say is it's such a small period in your life. So if you're really struggling with high school, I know it's really hard, but just keep that in you, that knowledge that it's 6 to 7 years out of your whole life. Like, once you're gone, it's finished, it's done, and you need to let it go. If it's been a hard time, it's up to you to drop that story and move on and forge who you are in the world. And suddenly, when you do leave, you just realise how much the world opens up to you. Sometimes scary, because you're then expected to take a lot of responsibility and just step into this adult world. But the other flip side of that is it's just massive. Like, traveling, you can travel the world, you can do anything. And I mean, you can do anything whilst you're in high school. It's just that you're limited by, like I've said before, the institution, so what's expected of you. But when you leave, like, what you'll get is just, it's such a small period of time in your whole life. And sometimes you'll wish you could go back because there's a security in that. But just know that it is such a small period in your life, especially right now if it feels like a really big thing for you. You need to really focus on creating a vision for your future. Sometimes that can work as an escape a bit. Like, if you find it really hard to cope, just, it's important to start visualizing, rather than what your present situation is at the moment, but creating what you want for your life. If you put more energy on what you don't like, I know this ends up being that woo-woo stuff, but you will get more of it. Like, you actually have to be absolutely 100% focused on where you want to go and your intention, and put absolutely, and I mean absolutely none, like 0 energy on the things that you don't like about your current life or your circumstance of high school. It's like you just cannot even give 1 second of thought to the fact that you're not happy. It has to literally be, this is what's going to happen for me when I leave. This is what I'm going to forge for my life when I get out of here, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's a bit of a rant, but they're the 3 things. So definitely that it's an institution. If it doesn't work for you, there's nothing wrong for you. There's nothing wrong with you. You'll find the learning method that works for you. And let me tell you, you continue to learn. If you're a smart person, you'll continue to learn. You should continue to learn. You should be learning your whole life. And school just may not have been the way that, or might not be the way for you that you learn best, right? Second one is that these people that you meet, whilst they may be your friends now and they may continue to be your friends when you leave, they also may not be. And it's a very small period of your life, high school. And, like my experience, you may or may not look back on it and think, oh, it was a fantastic time. You may just not have any feeling about it. But you'll know that it was such a small period, whether or not you loved it or you hated it, it was such a small period in your life, 6, 7 years out of possible 90 if you're lucky. The other one is that, who you were in high school is not who you are. So we can change who we are any second of the day. It's a really abstract thing to say, and it might go over some people's heads, but the reality is who you know yourself to be doesn't mean much because it isn't who you could be. And so when you're in high school, you can get very attached to an identity. You can often get really attached to an identity that other people form of you. So just be clear that you're living true to who you are. And if you're a bit of a sort of person that's, if you're bullied, these sort of things, for being authentic and who you are, just keep in mind that these things are going to be your asset. Like, if you can be an authentic person and you're true to who you really are, that is so charismatic, especially when you're in the big outside world. Do know that that actually is your defining sort of feature. That isn't anything that sets you apart from everybody else. People probably throw that around a lot, but it's a truth. Like anyone that I've met that's actually interesting may or not have any, may or may not have had like a great time at high school. They might have been good in high school too, or like they weren't bullied. But the fact is, they were always authentic to who they were. They were always truthful for who they were, and that's number one. And so keep that in mind if you're going through a hard time. That you know it matters to be that way and be a stand for that. And like I said, vision a future. If you're really struggling, vision a future for you that is so grand that you can really put all your energy into heading to, so that you're not putting any energy or focus whatsoever on the bad stuff. Anyway, I hope that wasn't a massive rant and it half made sense. But I just sort of been inspired because I was thinking about my high school reunion and how desperately sad it was. But anyway, if you have any comments to make, just leave them below. Otherwise, I will do another video in the future. Thank you. Bye.